Could you imagine Bitcoin breaking up in this inverse head and shoulders right shoulder towards the neckline, breaking the neckline towards its target of around $90,000? I can imagine. I want to talk about those possibilities, but I also want to just discuss the general range where Bitcoin is trading right now, the consolidation that's happening, and I even want to discuss if this doesn't play out. What does this cycle look like so far? Where are we in this cycle? What does consolidation look like to the downside? So hit the subscribe, hit the like. Let's jump into the video. So we're absolutely going to break down this daily chart because the setup is there and it is 100% in play. I'm going to talk about in the short term what needs to happen, some bullish confirmations that need to happen. But before we do that, I do want to start zooming out a little bit and start kind of anticipating if that doesn't happen. Here's Willy Woo. Bitcoin is not going to break all-time highs until more pain and boredom plays out. A lot of people think this. And if you go to a weekly chart on Bitcoin, if you go to a monthly chart on Bitcoin, it makes so much sense why there might not be this break to the upside right now, this break towards all-time highs right now. And it's 100% okay. On the bright side, miners are capitulating, and when that is through, it nearly always ends in a huge rally. Look for compressions in this ribbon, buy and hodl in these regions. So you can see the Bitcoin hash ribbons consolidating once again. But if you actually look back at this chart, I know it's hard to see, but when we get that compression on these hash ribbons, you do see Bitcoin price and those blue lines, the blue graph, starts moving up. So it seems like there's a general consensus across the industry, analysts, even if people think there's going to be more consolidation, even more downside, we're getting close, right, to that next leg up. But there really needs to be patience involved. So before I do talk about the explosive move that could play out in the coming days or weeks, I do want to just break down the macro. I think it's always good to revisit the macro charts. This is weekly on Bitcoin. Here's what I want to point out. In just an ultra picture perfect chart for Bitcoin right now, this will hold that 20-week moving average support. But what I really want to point out is this. Bitcoin is 63 days. 60 days. I mean, it's June 20th, right? So it's around 2 months after the Bitcoin halving. We're very much in this kind of phase. If we look at previous cycles, we're like right here, right? If you go to the cycle before that, we're like right around here. And yeah, there was really nice support at the 20-week moving average those last two cycles. But what I do want to point out is this, and we're going to talk a lot about volatility to the downside and how that plays out in bull markets. But if you go look at Bitcoin in the 2013 bull market, you can see Bitcoin briefly broke down below the 20-week moving average in a need for consolidation. So there's always that move in play, right, for Bitcoin to break that 20-week moving average. So that's not like a fail-safe support it has to hold or that we're in a bear market. But here's what's really important on the weekly, and then we'll dive into the shorter-term charts. This is really what I'm watching. If we look at this move of overbought on Bitcoin, if I show it to you, on the momentum oscillator, overbought move on Bitcoin. If we look at the overbought move on Bitcoin last cycle, right? This was that first top of Bitcoin. I just want to really point this out to you because this is important. That move that happened at that first top last cycle after Bitcoin halving was around 259 days after the Bitcoin halving. This move of overbought, I want to point this out. This is so important. Happened before Bitcoin halving. Bitcoin has not been in this overbought environment, a parabolic move into overbought. And I think I might have mentioned this once before. After the Bitcoin halving. That's one piece. Now let's take this a step further. If we really look at what's happening here, Bitcoin going into overbought into the halving and before the halving, we're getting a very similar vibe of kind of this area of Bitcoin. 2 cycles ago, Bitcoin making a really nice move to the upside, overbought, consolidating back down. And just look at the consolidation on the RSI at that moment through halving, all the way down to like 53 on the RSI. Right now, Bitcoin's around 62 or so. So this consolidation into halving on the RSI, so similar to the consolidation in the Bitcoin halving of the RSI back then, right? And then we take this a step further and we look at the cycle before that. This is 2012. Look at this consolidation out of overbought into Bitcoin halving on the RSI at kind of a level average between the last two. So here's 2 cycles ago, that consolidation. Here's the 2012 consolidation. And here we are right now in the consolidation. Just generally that basically the 60, the 50 to 60 some range on the RSI is this consolidation area. So this is what's really kind of encouraging to me when I'm looking at these charts, because then I go look at the last cycle and I'm like, all right, around Bitcoin halving, what was going on? And I'm like, man, there was no similar move like into overbought right before halving and then going into halving, we're cooling back down. It was not like that, right? So the reason why I'm encouraged by it is there's a lot more similarities to what's happening here on Bitcoin to previous cycles, 2 cycles ago, 3 cycles ago. So that tends to lead me to believe that there is a ton of upside for Bitcoin right now. And the most convincing chart playing into what I just said is on the monthly. Look at the monthly oscillator on Bitcoin right now, this RSI. Look at this. Does this look like a top of a bull market right here? So right here, bull market overbought indicator, bull market overbought indicator, bull market overbought indicator. This RSI, where it is right now, it obviously went into overbought around 77, way more consistent with something like this, the beginning of the 2017 bull market. And with that being said, this move that's happening right now, I want to point out what happened on Bitcoin during that move. If we go to the weekly chart, what was happening? Bitcoin was retracing to the Fibonacci bull market doors, this yellow rectangle that we have there. Now, this bull market door area for Bitcoin this cycle around, if we remember bull market high to bear market low, it's that green rectangle, this retracement area that Bitcoin did break above. It's always in play for Bitcoin to revisit that. We had a crazy wick right after Bitcoin halving to the top of that range, but like 2017, maybe Bitcoin falls to that area. And it's just something, I'm not saying that I think will happen, but I just want to put this into perspective. Around this time in that 2017 cycle, Bitcoin did that. And it wasn't the end of the game for Bitcoin. It was the beginning. It was the beginning of the bull cycle, the parabolic bull move. So I wanted to really just kind of bring all that back together. It's probably a little discombobulated a little bit, but it's a really strong perspective of where we are in the cycle. And again, just to really bring it home, we're around 60 days after the Bitcoin halving. Bitcoin topped 560 days after the last Bitcoin halving. Prior to that, Bitcoin topped 518 days after the Bitcoin halving. Prior to that, Bitcoin topped 392 days. We're only 60 days after the Bitcoin halving. And by the way, this move of Bitcoin falling back to that Fibonacci, that actually happened 2 cycles ago, 245 days after the Bitcoin halving. We are so early, everybody. We can't be so spoiled. We cannot be so spoiled that we are expecting all-time highs, crypto's going parabolic, all coins are going parabolic. We're only 60 days after the Bitcoin halving. We've had to wait months and months longer in previous cycles to get the move that everybody wants right now. So that's that. Now Bitcoin on the daily. This is Bitcoin on the daily. There it is. Let's actually just talk about what needs to happen on the short term. For me, it's always about the moving averages. And we're actually going to look at an example. That's where this bars pattern, this fractal is coming from. But look at this 50-day moving average right here. 50-day moving average resistance so far on the daily. That's the first area on the short term I'm watching. Is there going to be continued resistance? Are we going lower? If that is the case, what is happening with the RSI? Notice the inverse head and shoulders setup. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder in formation. We even have an inverse head and shoulders on the RSI on this daily chart, which is it's pretty cool to see. Now, if Bitcoin is going to make the break above these moving averages, I look back and you can find similar moves all across the board, but this area back here where Bitcoin was in a very similar area, cooled down on the RSI right around here, 36 or so on the RSI. Bitcoin had to contend with that 20 and 50-day moving average, all back here, right? And that move, Bitcoin breaking above those two moving averages, led to the breakout for Bitcoin to head towards all-time high, to break the bull market doors. A very meaningful move for Bitcoin. To get a meaningful move like that, and that's where this fractal really comes from, is to break those moving averages and is to get this RSI momentum back to the upside. So, if we get a move like that, that's why it's going to look very similar to the fractal that I have there. And that's what the move will likely look like, I think, even in the shorter term. I'm allowing support, as I've mentioned, to this higher low Fibonacci you can see on Bitcoin. So this could be another fake out to the downside. Swing low of the head to the swing high to the neckline. This green area, it's a higher low Fibonacci. Bitcoin doesn't have to hold support right where it is right now, and it has to do it now. Bitcoin can continue trickling down. We could hit 60,000. We could fall just below, wick below the Fibonacci, put in a higher low right shoulder, and then this move's playing out. So even in the short term, there's still support I'm watching for. There's a fail-safe, that higher low Fibonacci we've been talking about. But all the while, the biggest thing I'll be watching for Bitcoin, can it break above these moving averages? Even if it's going to fall now and then bounce, when will we get the break? Maybe the 20-day needs to consolidate into the 50-day a little bit more, and then we're breaking to the upside. The worst is over. If Bitcoin fails to, go higher in the shorter term, and if we really do need to go through a bit more pain and maybe even some capitulation, the biggest thing I'm watching is really twofold. I would say it's this. Here's the bull market doors on this daily chart, basically. How does Bitcoin interact with that? That is in play to visit that entire range. And then with that, if we go to the weekly chart, it's anywhere between the 50 and the 20. So the blue and the green lines. And I'm saying this, everybody, if Bitcoin falls anywhere in this range, there will be so much fear, I think, in the market. But I do not think that was it. I think this will just be a healthy consolidation for Bitcoin before going higher. So the 50-day pulling into the Fibonacci bull market doors, the 20-week moving average right here. I'm sorry, the 50-week moving average, the 20-week moving average, bull market doors in between. There's just room for consolidation all along the way if Bitcoin's going to fall before going higher. And it will look like previous cycles even still, especially from a momentum perspective. So that's it. That's what I'm watching for Bitcoin. There's a lot there, but there's a lot to watch on the macro, the zoomed in charts. We'll see what Bitcoin does if Bitcoin can make a move to these moving averages. Right now, the biggest area to watch is right around 66,400 and the 20-day around 67,800. So that's what I'll be watching. I appreciate you cruising through. Hit the subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Hit that like if you got any value or enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.